Yo, Headliner Nation, welcome back into the Fantasy Headliners. Kyle here to break down our waiver wire targets as we head into week 13 of the NFL season. Now, week 12, I feel like, stop if I sound like a broken record here, but it was weird, right? I mean, week 12 was crazy. I am going to name week 12 the week of lots of injuries and touchdowns from guys that we really didn't care about. Backup quarterbacks coming out of nowhere. Guys that haven't done anything all season scoring touchdowns. And a lot of injuries as well. And when there's injuries, the waiver wire is bound to be active. And if you're headed into the playoffs, you've got to work the waiver wire this week to make sure your team is set up for success. Let's go ahead and hop into it. We're going to kick it off with the running backs as always. Rachaad White from Tampa Bay. Now, I wasn't even going to list this guy because I was like, there's no way this guy is available in leagues. Believe it or not, over on ESPN, he shows is under 60% owned. And on other platforms, he's barely at 70% owned. That seems a little bit odd for this late in the season for a guy taking over the backfield. Now, it might only be for 1 week. Leonard Fournette said last week, no, I'm going to be good to go. I'll be fine. And then he doesn't end up playing even after the bye, which is very odd. So we'll have to keep things, we're going to have to keep an eye on things, and we're going to have to see how Leonard Fournette progresses. Rachaad White, not a big day on the ground like a lot of people had thought. I thought he would end up having a bigger day as well. Didn't find the end zone, but he did have 9 receptions. 9 targets, 9 receptions for 45 yards. That is good. At least kind of takes a little bit of the blow off of, how bad he was on the ground. JaMycal Hasty for Jacksonville. Now, Travis Etienne, who left early with an ankle/foot injury, has already said he's going to be good to go in week 13. But again, like I just mentioned with Leonard Fournette, how much can we trust that, right? We've heard it with running backs before. I'm going to be good to go. We'll be fine. And then all of a sudden we get to, and they're not good, right? So for JaMycal Hasty, if you own Travis Etienne, then Hasty is going to be a guy that we'll take a shot at. Caught all 5 of his targets, 67 yards and a touchdown. Didn't do much through the air, but they do have Detroit this week, which means there'll probably be some points put up in this game. And JaMycal Hasty will be a guy that will be utilized in the pass catching game if there's no Travis Etienne. If you don't own Travis Etienne, I'm going to be out on JaMycal Hasty. No reason to waste a waiver wire pick on a guy that might not even play. But if you own Travis Etienne, we're going to want to make sure we back him up just in case. Gus Edwards from Baltimore. Yeah, he had a costly fumble. 16 carries, though, compared to only 3 from Hill and Drake. So he's the lead running back by far. And again, maybe you don't start him every single week, but at this point of the season, if you've got guys that are out snapping and out touching other running backs by that margin, we need them on our team. He did end up finding the end zone, which was good. Wasn't very efficient, but when better matchups come up, we'll see what happens. Dare, as we like to say, Alla Walla Bing Bang around here. Dare Ogunbowale, he finds himself maybe with some fantasy value out of nowhere, which is crazy to think considering the fact that Dameon Pierce at one point in time was playing so well. But for the second straight week, Dameon Pierce essentially limited to a bench role. Now, are they trying to keep him healthy, knowing that the season's basically out of touch at this point? Are they limiting his touches? Do they have an issue with something else? Even the touches he's getting right now are not that good. Dare ended up scoring as well. So because of that, he is a guy that we need to look at, especially Dameon Pierce owners. Maybe there's something nagging Dameon Pierce. Maybe they make him inactive for a week and Dare ends up being the lead back. If you own Dameon Pierce, we got to look at Dare O and say, hey, is it worth the bench spot to stash him deep and maybe we end up needing to utilize him? Zonovan Knight from the New York Jets. Now, James Robinson was a healthy scratch. Some of that has to do with the fact that if he hits a certain amount of rushing yards this season, then the pick that they ended up trading becomes a higher pick. And I'm sure the New York Jets are thinking to themselves, we don't really want to do that if we don't need to. But Michael Carter's injured now. So what does that mean? Are we really going to make James Robinson the lead back next week? I don't know that for certain. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. But Zonovan Knight was the guy that came in, had 14 carries and 69 yards after Michael Carter went down. Ty Johnson did end up scoring a touchdown as well, but I'll chase the volume. And the volume was with Zonovan Knight. He also added 34 yards in the passing game too. This is a guy that a lot of people might not even grab because Ty Johnson is so ingrained ingrained in a lot of owners out there. They're like, hey, Ty Johnson, I'm going to grab him. I already know the name. Zonovan Knight, people don't know. Could end up leading to a very inexpensive waiver wire day accusation for you. Samaje Perine, we're going to toss him up here again. He had 7 targets, scored a touchdown in place of Mixon. Will Mixon be back this coming week against Kansas City? That's yet to be seen. Tyler Algier going up against Pittsburgh had the same amount of carries as Cordero Patterson, and he had more rush yards as well. Tyler Algier, if you're looking for a guy that's going to get you 5 to 8 fantasy points, Tyler Algier could end up being that guy. Will run for anywhere between 50 and 70 yards most days. He's going to get probably 10 to 12 in that area type of carries, maybe 9 to 13 if we widen it out a little bit more. And again, it's going to depend on how the game script goes. Brian Robinson for Washington had been dropped quite a bit, believe it or not. 18 carries for 105 yards, added a touchdown through the air. If he was dropped going up against the Giants coming up here soon, I would grab him up here too. Isaiah Pacheco, he's close to being off the waiver wire show. Right now, he's sitting anywhere between 65 and 75% owned on multiple platforms. Most people have grabbed him by now, but he is firmly settled in as the lead back. He's got some good matchups ahead as well, where Kansas City will probably be leading some of those games. We're going to see a lot of Pacheco here to end the season. Jordan Mason from San Francisco, really need to bring him up because I'm unsure of what's going on out in the Bay Area right now. CMC apparently is dealing with some knee soreness that has popped up. That might be something that limits him over the next couple of weeks. And Elijah Mitchell is looking at a sprained MCL based on what Kyle Shanahan said. So Jordan Mason could end up being a guy who came in last week and was kind of that 3 back, because you had Mitchell go down, you had CMC already banged up, and then the next guy was kind of Jordan Mason at that point. Keep in mind, though, if you add Jordan Mason, the one person that benefits from this type of a situation the most, Deebo Samuel. I'm sure we'll see him in the backfield quite a bit now as well. Kyren Williams from the LA Rams. I've been mentioning Kyren Williams for weeks now, and he's not a guy that I'm throwing in and starting right now, but he did have more carries than Cam Akers, even though he was a little less efficient and had less yards, and he also saw 3 targets in the passing game. Akers didn't have any targets. Kyren Williams is a guy that I feel like is kind of being groomed to take over for that lead role, and because there's no more Darrell Henderson, as long as he outperforms Cam Akers, this is going to be a backfield for him to take away. Now, it's going to be difficult because they really don't have any passing game right now. So Kyren Williams is just kind of a hold person right now. And if we're desperate, we've got a bye week coming up very soon. Oh, I think I need to mention that as well here. We've got 2 teams on a bye this week. Not that bad. Next week, however, we have got 6 teams on a bye. So if you're looking to add guys, look ahead on your team. Look ahead on your schedule. If you've got teams that are going to fall into that bye and you've got players on your team that are in that area, it's better to try and add some people now than wait until next week when there's going to be other fantasy owners who are going to also be scrambling to add players with Bye-Mageddon coming up and 6 teams missing. So this is actually a better week for you to try and grab some players. Keep that in mind as you hit the waiver wire this week. Let's move on to wide receivers. The wide receiver position, DJ Chark and Jameson Williams, both from Detroit, showing up. Now, the reason I'm going to add DJ Chark is, do I sense revenge game incoming, going up against the Jacksonville Jags who drafted DJ Chark and then cut him loose? All right, maybe not a revenge game, but he might be the number 2 in this offense. Now, the last time we saw him, we had a healthy Josh Reynolds and a healthy Khalif Raymond, and we also had TJ Hawkinson. He makes his way back this week. He scores a touchdown. We've got guys that are beat up, including Reynolds and Raymond, who was limping around all over the place last week. DJ Chark could have that type of a game coming up against Jacksonville. He is a guy that I'm grabbing. Jameson Williams, for me, he's another bench option or another stash option right now because, yes, his window to practice has been activated. I would have to think we're still another maybe 2 to 3 weeks away from actually seeing Jameson Williams, however, but when we do see him, it could be fireworks. My fan tracks first up this week, the guy that I'm really trying to add across the board that I think deserves the most attention is Isaiah McKenzie from Buffalo. 10 targets last week, caught 6 of them for 96 yards and a touchdown. Now, last week on the tight end show, You heard me talking about Dawson Knox a little bit. And my discussion around Dawson Knox last week was if Josh Allen's elbow is really that big of an issue, they're going to want to limit how much he throws it down the field, which could mean some of those intermediate targets for Dawson Knox. I think I was right about that. I was right about the wrong person, though, because I thought it was going to be Dawson Knox. Lo and behold, it's Isaiah McKenzie. Isaiah McKenzie is a guy that, as of right now, could be up for some pretty big targets coming up, especially against New England, who might, with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis probably a tougher matchup on the outside. I moved to sitting him this week. Diggs will always be a start. But again, if we're not throwing the ball down the field as much as we can, which if you watch that Buffalo and Detroit game, you heard Tony Romo talk about it over and over, and the throws and the trajectory that we were seeing from those throws absolutely made us feel like that Josh Allen just wasn't able to get everything on it. Now, he did make some fantastic throws when it meant the most there towards the end of the game, but Isaiah McKenzie is still a guy that I think is going to benefit from Josh Allen being a little banged up with that elbow right now. Darius Slayton going up against Washington, big reception last week. Doesn't show in the box score, but the things that the guy is doing right now in terms of route running and winning down the field, it's a lot for this Giants team, and it was a lot needed for a team that didn't have anybody step up at the wide receiver position. 6 targets was tied for the team league. Unfortunately, only caught 3 of those, but he did end up having 63 yards. Better days ahead, though, for him. Better days ahead for sure. Nelson Aguilar with New England, with Jacoby Myers leaving with a concussion early. He ended up having 8 targets, caught 6 for 65 yards and a touchdown. Parker did lead the team in yards. He ended up having 80 receiving yards, so Devontae Parker led in yards. But Aguilar, to me, is a better all-around wide receiver to invest in. Even with the tough matchup this week, again, with those buys coming up soon, maybe it's something where we do have to look at owning him sooner rather than later. Zay Jones from Jacksonville. I mean, I wasn't even going to look at Zay Jones because I thought to myself, this dude he's got to be over 70% owned. He's barely 50% owned in some leagues, which absolutely is crazy, especially in PPR leagues. 14 targets, 11 receptions, 145 yards. The one thing I've said about Zay Jones when I've made him a start this year, when he gets the targets, he's absolutely a start. As long as we get him like 6 to 8 targets a game, he's golden, and he's going to get Detroit this week. Detroit's defense has been much, much better. Jeff Okudah could end up being back this week. All those things could end up being tough, but the one thing we know is Jacksonville's probably going to have to throw it against Detroit. So maybe the upside isn't there, but he should still have a pretty good floor. Chase Claypool's going to be an ad. Unfortunately, Darnell Mooney looks to be done for the year, which wide receiver 1 is probably Chase Claypool now. Elijah Moore from the New York Jets. It only took 12 weeks for Elijah Moore to do something, but lo and behold, he finally did. Caught both of his targets for 64 yards and a touchdown. I mean, the legend of Mike White. Is White going to be the quarterback moving forward? If he is, Elijah Moore could end up having more than enough value down the stretch. Him and Garrett Wilson both. Traylon Burks, 4 catches on 6 targets for 70 yards. Now, 51 of those yards did come on one play. Maybe he's starting to break out. He is going to have a tougher assignment against Philadelphia this week, though. Olamide Zaccheaus led the team last week as the wide receiver 1. More targets, receptions, and yards than Drake London. The offense is so up and down right now. It's really hard to predict Olamide Zaccheaus on any given week, but, I mean, they're probably going to have to throw against Pittsburgh this coming week. DeAndre Carter for the Chargers. A lot of this is going to hinge on whether Mike Williams is back this week, but he did catch 7 of his 10 targets for 73 yards and a touchdown. Maybe just a one-off, but with Gerald Everett basically out of the picture now, it seems like DeAndre Carter is a guy that if there's no Mike Williams as a wide receiver 3, may see more targets. And then Van Jefferson for the LA Rams. They're going to get Seattle this week, but there's no Cooper Kupp. Allen Robinson is now done for the year. They have a backup quarterback at this point, so he's got a clean slate. He did get 7 targets, only caught 3 of them, only 29 receiving yards, but he scored a touchdown. Again, the wide receiver 1 in that offense, and more than likely they're going to have to throw it. Even if they try, they only threw it like 8 times in the first half, I think, but then they really started to throw it more in the second half. I mean, Sean McVay he's going to make his quarterback throw it. At this point, they don't really have a choice. Only 2 tight ends to bring up this week, and you might be saying on the other end, but Kyle, there's a lot of tight ends that had like good weeks this past week, and there were a lot of tight ends this past week that kind of came out of nowhere. They hadn't done anything, and all of a sudden they decided to show up and give us some fantasy-worthy performances. And you might be looking at some guys like that. Josh Oliver might be one. I'm probably out on Josh Oliver at this point. Why? Because yes, Isaiah Likely was out, but it's still Mark Andrews at this point. Hunter Henry showed up, but it was 1 week. Hunter Henry has been garbage all season long. I'm not going to jump to that right now. Jordan Akins had a touchdown. I even mentioned in my start sit video that this was an opportunity for him this week, but I can never guess it right, so I wasn't even going to start him. And guess what? I still can't guess it right. John Bates ended up having a touchdown. Mecole Pruitt. I mean, this is a team that doesn't even throw to Kyle Pitts when he's healthy, and they're throwing touchdowns to Pruitt. Get out of here. I'm not adding any tight ends like that. I'm going to focus on 2, Foster Moreau and Tyler Conklin. These are the guys that are the tight ends on their team. They're guys that we've seen do it before. I'm not risking a waiver wire pickup on somebody that we haven't seen do it before that might not do it again and is a one-off fluke. Foster Moreau and Tyler Conklin, they're not really one-off flukes. Now, Conklin didn't have a great day, only 50 receiving yards, but again, if Mike White is the quarterback, this offense looks a whole lot better, which could make Tyler Conklin much better as well. And we talked about it with Michael Carter. No Michael Carter, maybe James Robinson doesn't end up playing, who knows? That's just more targets that could be available to Tyler Conklin as well. And Foster Moreau, 7 targets last week. Didn't do a whole lot with them. 3 receptions, 33 yards, and 1 touchdown. For me, he's a low tight end 1 option with a whole lot of risk associated with him. Let's talk about some streamers. If you're looking to stream some quarterbacks this week, I've got 3. Marcus Mariota going up against Pittsburgh, one of the worst pass defenses in all of football. I have to assume that Marcus Mariota is going to come in with a good game against Pittsburgh. TJ Watt's going to be the factor, though. If they really make Marcus Mariota sweat, he could have a bad day. But if they game plan correctly, Atlanta, listen to that. If you game plan correctly, get the ball out fast, run it a little bit, could end up having a pretty good day there. Mike White, he's going to get Minnesota. They just got torched by Mac Jones and the New England Patriots offense. Going up against the New York Jets now. Mike White coming off a huge week. Mike White might be the best streaming option. And then Deshaun Watson, he will be back from suspension and going up against his former team this week. I'm concerned about Deshaun Watson. It's been I believe they said 700 days since he played in his last NFL regular season game. That's a long time, and it is Houston, so it's not the, best defense in the world. It is a defense that, for the most part, has helped limit wide receivers this season, so I am a little bit concerned about it, but if you still have Deshaun Watson on your radar, you might be able to grab him this week and use him and just see how things play out. Let's talk defense, right? Defense for me right now, 2 this week, Seattle and Green Bay, and they're really going up against banged up teams. The LA Rams, they're missing their top 2 wide receivers, and they're missing their top quarterback. That's a recipe for disaster. Green Bay, they're going to get Chicago this week. Yeah, they got torched by Philly this past week, which means they're probably even less desirable by many fantasy people out there. But with Chicago banged up, Justin Fields might not play. You're missing Darnell Mooney. All those things combined, Green Bay is a team that I grab and I potentially use this week if Justin Fields doesn't play. If Justin Fields plays, Green Bay is absolutely off the table. Last section of the video, I've got a few players that we need to talk about potentially dropping this week. Gerald Everett is one. Started off the season hot, has not done anything since. He's going to be a sit for me moving forward. Greg Dulcich, same thing. Started off the year really hot. Not really the year, but when he came back from injury, he started off hot. He only has 52 receiving yards over the last 3 weeks. Curtis Samuel, he's done nothing as of recent. He's kind of off the board. Taylor Heineke is not looking his way whatsoever. Dameon Pierce, we're probably not dropping him right now, but we're not starting him either. We absolutely can't start him with how he's performed the last 2 weeks. So keep an eye on it. If we have another 1 or 2 weeks like that, then yeah, we might be cutting Dameon Pierce loose. For those of you that own James Robinson, I think it speaks volume when you're without your top running back. So you traded for James Conner, and then you made him a healthy and active, especially when you had a guy starting that hadn't played all season long. The draft pick here, I think, is the issue. Tyler Boyd, very worried about him. He hasn't done anything with Jamar Chase, which is crazy because he's had some really good matchups to smash in, and he hasn't done it. Tyler Boyd with Jamar Chase on the way back could be on the way out of our fantasy teams. And then Trey McBride, I know a lot of people grabbed Trey McBride after the Zach Ertz injury, hoping that he would kind of step into the Zach Ertz role. That has not happened. Marquise Brown is back. Rondell Moore will get him back at some point when he heals up. Trey McBride for me he's gone. He's kaput. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Waiver wire video for week 13 to get you all ready to move forward. Again, fantasy playoffs are right around the corner. If you've got a spot wrapped up or you're close to wrapping up a spot with Buyemageddon and 6 buy teams next week, I would highly encourage all of you to utilize the waiver wire this week. If you want to make any transactions and you don't know whether or not you should, leave a comment down below and I'll try to respond to as many as possible. Everybody, though, have a safe weekend. Stay healthy. Not weekend, we're into the week now. Have a safe week. Stay healthy, and I'll catch you up on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.